of Duty Cold War, Black Ops Cold War, whatever. Who cares? I haven't cared about Call of Duty since Modern Warfare 2. But the point is, that trailer, uh, that looks like a Red Scare trailer someone put together to talk about what's wrong with America or how we've been duped or something you expect to see from like QAnon. Now, Call of Duty is always skewed somewhat very right-wing. Sort of the... how do you say this? That pro-imperialism, pro-American exceptionalism, pro just all this fascistic, America is always right and her enemies are always wrong, that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at Upper Echelon Gamers talking about how Cold War has broken a veil of entertainment and social commentary the franchise has previously never even come close to. It claims the trailer addresses tactics of destabilization backed by political ideology, which bear striking and frightening similarities to contemporary America. Obviously playing off this right-wing fear that it's the communists and anarchists who are taking over, if only. That's true. COD is an army recruitment ad, yeah. In fact, I think they've gotten permission to work with the army to model weapons and gear, and in so doing promote the military. So let's see what Upper Echelon Gaming has to say about the trailer. I'll be honest, I don't have much to say about the trailer except that it's some weird Red Scare propaganda shit that doesn't seem to have anything to do with a fucking video game. So, Upper Echelon Gamers, tell us what you have to say. Take it away.
Today is going to be an intense video. I'll be discussing historical events, contemporary politics, graphic and violent video games, as well as connections between real-world chaos and fictional narratives. If there was ever a video I created that would be demonetized or suppressed, it's this one. So if you like the content, please subscribe and share the material. Call of Duty is a monument of gaming success.
I watched Freems playing Warzone last night, and it looked pretty fun. I mean, it looked like the standard polished COD stuff. I just don't care about dumb as rocks first-person shooters. I prefer something like the Metro series or Prey if I'm going to play a first-person shooter.
The game has been produced and sold around the globe for 17 years. It is one of the most profitable entertainment franchises to ever exist throughout history, and has impacted the lives of millions, even hundreds of millions of different people. To some, it is a simple time consumption activity, with no message or value. To others, it is a career, a hobby.
And the people who play Call of Duty without paying attention to its politics are kind of part of the problem.
Or a favorable way to socially relax. But to one final group, it is a cultural phenomenon that has real-world social impact and must be monitored.
Well, the best on each on, there's a difference between a AAA game being produced in the United States and being on the U.S. side and something which is all but explicitly propaganda for the U.S. military, such as the Call of Duty series is. Which I think is funny because prior to COD 4, the first Modern Warfare, it was just kind of, one of the military shooters. And COD 4 actually had a little bit of ambiguity in, are we the good guys? Is America really doing the right thing? Like, there was still quite a bit of jingoism in it. I'm not saying it was a perfect story or what have you. But there was still a little bit of that ambiguity there, which is completely lost in every game subsequent to it. I just think it's funny because COD 4 is really when the series became the first-person shooter series. Modern Warfare 2 held records for years as the most pre-ordered game in history. No. COD 4 was released in 2007. Jesus, was it that long ago? And Spec Ops, The Line, it's 2012. Spec Ops Line is pretty good about saying no. Yeah, no, that I love Spec Ops Line. I might play it on stream sometime when I feel like just doing a solid game stream. Because that's not something I could watch videos or something with. You got to pay attention to that shit. But yeah, Spec Ops The Line was 2012, so there was quite a bit of distance between the two. Although I do think that Spec Ops The Line was in large part sort of a response to the takeover of Call of Duty. In fact, a lot of the aesthetics of Spec Ops were clearly meant to evoke the aesthetics of Call of Duty. The two of them called the story mode in BF5 and in the US better than Nazi Germany. So yeah, I can see taking a side there, but IDK in general. I've played more Battlefield multiplayer than I have Call of Duty multiplayer, but I've played more Call of Duty single player than I have Battlefield multiplayer. And that's because the Battlefield multiplayer is, if anything, less than the Call of Duty single player. So I can't really say, although I don't remember there being a lot of that nuance or ambiguity in the Battlefield single players that I've seen. Right. True, Bestoni-chan.
And sculpted in order to adhere to a new age of modern equity, equality, and representation. This atmosphere dates back a number of years, but can be best exemplified by articles from major news publications such as the following: Call of Duty World War II's diversity is nothing more than marketing. This piece would go on to claim that the game whitewashes history, explores a tokenistic representation of the real-world stories it seeks to portray, while being an example of sexist development strategies with shallow and misogynistic undertones. The game was effectively lambasted for trying to adhere to shifting social standards of inclusion and diversity while doing so poorly, but these criticisms were just...
Yeah. I mean, there were minorities in the military in World War II. I don't know. I've never played World War II, so I'm not sure what. I suppose I could read the article here. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait. Whereas pop culture control World War II as a narrative, it's always been presented as a white man's war, from San Suu Dream to the Great Escape. Thin Red Line, Saving Private Ryan, that's the perspective you get. Call of Duty World War II isn't going to change this, but it wants credit for trying. Okay, yeah. There were plenty of minority units in World War II, and that ignores the fact that America wasn't the only nation fighting in World War II, and there were plenty of what we would call minorities fighting in other nations' military because they weren't minorities in those nations. So this is a fair criticism if you only encounter black or brown people or women or what have you in support roles, as it says later. Fighters of color, fighters who are women in supporting roles. Now, yes, Call of Duty makes a solid effort to only let you play pretty much as the Americans. Although that was another nice thing about Modern Warfare, from what I remember, you also got to play as the Brits. Yeah, same Wizards Red Book. I played Bad Company 2. The story of Bad Company 2 up to a certain point, and I remember that being decent, but not terribly nuanced from what I remember. Like, it was a fun game, but not its politics were pretty right-wing. Vital players in the year 2017 should inhabit and absorb all their experiences. But that's just it. Brothers of different races did fight alongside each other in World War II. So, yeah.
Shallow and misogynistic undertones. The game was effectively lambasted for trying to adhere to shifting social standards of inclusion and diversity while doing so poorly, but these criticisms were just the beginning, and over the next few years, Call of Duty would become one of the industry's most notable controversy marketing provocateurs, even if that controversy was...
Well, yeah, gaming has gotten a lot gayer, which is a good thing, to be clear. I love how much gayer gaming has gotten. So, of course, they're going to include trans pride, gay pride, the various pride flags as things you can use in the multiplayer, but they're going to, at best, pay lip service to that kind of thing in the campaign mode.
Was more often than not contrived or shallow upon final release. This, however, appears to be changing. The latest trailer for Call of Duty Cold War has just officially unveiled, and despite this 2-minute video being entirely void of gameplay, completely without context, and depicting nothing in terms of actual story framework, it by itself is already a scathing commentary on modern social discourse and political activism. The game's legitimate narrative may be something benign or uninteresting, but for 2 minutes, Activision Blizzard has brought a highly charged, compelling, and critical message to a demographic that...
Did I watch the short version? Hold on. I may have to cut this from the YouTube video, but... Is there a longer version? Oh, there is.
Understand what's going on around you. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself.
So this gives a little more context about what the game may be about this Perseus person. So that could be interesting, but somehow I doubt it.
It's a slow process, which we call active measures. The first stage being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. The next stage is destabilization. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems.
I love how this seems to be blaming the effects of the antagonisms of capitalism on Soviet propaganda or what have you. Hey, Dodge, how's it going, man?
The next stage is crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy. Period of normalization. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not.
A plan decades in the making.
The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. The danger is real.
So yeah, the main problem I have with that whole idea and narrative that the KGB were working to destabilize and demoralize America is that the KGB was never communist and isn't communist. So even if they were trying to build some sort of Soviet state in America, that's not something the left wing would support. They do stuff with gay flags and so on, but I would have liked if like, let's say Coca-Cola would have fought for LGBT instead of running with Nazis. Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Rainbow capitalism is what we call that.
It most likely fails to consider these events in any legitimate contemporary context. I'll have the full trailer linked down below for those that have not seen it. If you haven't, you can pause the video right now and go watch it. With that out of the way, we can discuss what seems to be a completely innocuous 2-minute promotional trailer to some, but is
Okay, to some. Yeah, that's not an innocuous trailer. There's some pretty clear messaging there, particularly using the Yuri Bezmenov interview.
far more relevant and integrated within modern political and social discourse than many realize. Without further ado, Call of Duty Cold War, the collision course of controversy. The most important place to begin is Yuri Bezmenov. Yuri Bezmenov, born 1939, was a KGB press and propaganda agent. Active from 1963 to 1986, he is most famous for his defection to the United States and subsequent publication of information about Soviet active measures, which were psychological warfare tactics to destabilize the United States from within. His discussions are available widely online, and his material on subversion has become an educational archive which is used in teaching curriculums as high as Yale and Harvard. This trailer is a series of graphics and Cold War footage, superimposed atop commentary from one of his lectures, discussing a timeline for the destabilization of Western democracy during the Cold War period. He describes a very slow process: demoralization, 15 to 20 years to demoralize an entire nation, then destabilization, focusing on the essentials: economy, foreign relations.
So I'm guessing he's going to try to link this to the Black Lives Matter riots and claim that they are a KGB effort, or maybe he won't explicitly link them to KGB, but that's the implication I'm assuming he's going to go with here, which could not be further from the truth.
Defense systems, and finally, crisis, with a violent transition of power, structure, and economy, while normalizing the tactics utilized to overthrow the free world. These tactics were real, the stories were true, and the final chilling comparison he makes is directly to the United States, while the message, "Know your history or be doomed," is displayed on screen. Yuri Bezmenov spoke about tactics employed by the Soviet Union, and to understand why this trailer alone, with no further context, is already on a collision course for widespread controversy, we need to understand what the Soviet Union really was. The Soviet Union is rooted in the October Revolution of 1917, when the Bolsheviks overthrew the Russian Provisional Government. However, it only became a consolidated version of actual Russian government after 1922. The Soviet Union followed an official state ideology of Marxist-Leninism with an essential component of state socialism. The core dominating pillar of its governance was the party, and its assured status as a sole ruling group. The terminology here is important to outline correctly, but also somewhat complicated. Communist, socialist, and Marxist are all semi-accurate terms to describe the Soviet Union, but
Wrong. There's absolutely nothing communist about the Soviet Union. And while there may have been some socialist aspects of the economy and government in the early days of the Soviet Union, those quickly became subsumed into the corruption of the party. And Marxism, maybe. Marxism is such a broad term that basically just refers to, as far as I can tell, the conflict of classes, the class antagonisms. That to say that it is some driving force of the ideology of the Soviet Union is both true and, to my mind, less than useful.
in the time since, those definitions have become largely polluted, and are spoken of more in the framework of a social media argument than anything else. In order to make the connection between real-world events and this one simple trailer, however, we need to dig rather deep. It all starts with recent American civil unrest, and this is the point where I need to communicate clearly that I will simply be showing and discussing statements and positions from existing public figures that are publicly available online, and I do not intend to advocate for further action against any of these individuals or the causes that they represent. I am merely drawing correlations between the Cold War trailer and real-world events. Please do not use this video or the statements highlighted as a reason to participate in any illegal or malicious action whatsoever. I do not condone or support that behavior. Again, I merely want to showcase why the Call of Duty Cold War trailer is a scathing commentary on the current activism that has swept across the United States in recent months. To understand where all of this started,
What? I knew he was going to tie the claims of Brezhnev into the Black Lives Matter protests. I knew that was where this was headed. I didn't think he was just going to be that explicit about it. Jesus Christ.
we must go back to July 2013 and the acquittal of a police officer who had been involved in a tragic shooting. The situation sparked national conversations about police brutality and racism in the United States. From the incident itself right up until the officer was released, but more importantly, in response to this event,
Okay, either he's doesn't realize what it says on here and he's lying, or there's something else, because as this says, right here in black and white, the Black Lives Matter movement was created in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who was not a police officer despite his desire to be otherwise.
3 women formed an organization called Black Lives Matter, a phrase now shouted in city and town streets across the entire country. These women were named Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. Reading from the official history page on their activist website, which is the homepage for Black Lives Matter as an organization, we can see the following. In 2013, 3 radical black organizers, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, created a black-centered political will and movement-building project called #BlackLivesMatter. The project is now a member-led global network of more than 40 chapters. Our members organize and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention in a world where black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise. These paragraphs are important because they outline that Black Lives Matter from an organizational standpoint is framed as a political movement. It is a political movement being projected across the nation as millions shout the words at anyone who will listen, and more importantly, anyone who will not listen alike.
I love how he's characterizing Black Lives Matter as just a slogan people shout to anyone who will listen, and not the rallying cry it is to call to action for the systemic change we need.
Yuri Bezmenov has long, well-articulated speeches. He outlines how the subversion tactics will take many forms. One such item is the promotion of social workers who will eventually erode the standard social links of peer-to-peer community interaction, something that aligns with the existing push for police officers to be replaced with social workers, while defunding the police force either partially or entirely. This is a radical idea that is rejected by most American citizens, yet some cities and politicians are forging ahead with the concept.
Okay, hang on. So, amid protest, majorities across racial and ethnic groups expressed support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah, but resist shifts of police. This makes sense to me a little bit. No. Fuck off. Oh, Wapo, I hate you. I hate Washington Post. Let's see. And support Black Lives Matter movement, record 69%. Say black, blue, and other minorities are denied equal treatment. Don't necessarily translate a majority preference on policies. 55% oppose reducing police funding in favor of more social service, for instance, with 40% in favor. So that means that from June 12th, and this is the same site, so assume they use the same information here. From June 12th to July 21st, there was an 8-point drop in the opposition to reducing police funding. So that means that the messaging is working and people are more in favor of defunding the police than they were even in June. And I wonder what the numbers are for August. So, yeah. Also, it's worth noting that the whole point of protests and the actions that BLM is taking is to make greater awareness and to convince people of the righteousness of their actions so that more people get on their side. After all, 15 years ago, gay marriage was not a popular move. And then, 7 years later, I think it was 2012 or 2010 or so, the gay marriage was legalized because public pressure had been made, propaganda had been made to get more people to agree with that correct belief, and so pressure was put and change was made. Obviously, it's working.
Regardless, Yuri Bezmenov discusses with clarity the tactic of sowing distrust between those that are tasked with protecting the population and the citizens themselves, an erosion of the journalistic process, and numerous other social realities that many see today and do not even reconsider because they have been normalized. This is an now defected KGB propaganda agent who worked within a Marxist, socialist, communist-oriented federation, disclosing, word for word, the tactics that are utilized to...
Oh, God. This is why the Soviet Union is one of the worst things to happen to socialism since McCarthy. Because since they kept those aesthetics of socialism, of Marxism, of communism, it's really hard and really awkward to point out how they were none of those things. And so the tactics and goals they employed were not the same goals as people like myself. We don't want to recreate the Soviet Union in America. That's not what we want to do. But it just sounds to a lot of people who don't know the difference like we're applying a no true Scotsman here, when I can point to specific aspects of the Soviet Union that prove that they are not socialist, that they definitely are not communist. But it still is something that disingenuous hacks like Upper Echelon Gamers here can point to and say, this is the goal of socialists. This is what communists want to do. This is what leftists want to do. It's not even a little bit.
To destabilize a nation. And this trailer features him, a previously mainstream figure of sorts, but not at the scale to which Call of Duty can propel him, as a commentator on the importance of knowing your history. On July 23rd, 2015, Patrice Cullors gives an interview to the Real News Network and answers a series of questions. At the 7-minute mark, she says the following.
I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers.
I guarantee she's going to say something about Marxism or socialism or something to that effect, and he's going to claim that connects them to Bezmenov.
We are trained Marxists.
Called it! You don't miss! I mean, obviously. Yes. Leftists have been at the forefront of just about every civil rights movement, movement towards progress in the history of this nation. Socialists and anarchists are the reasons we have the 40-hour work week and the 5-day work week. Socialists are the reason why, I don't know that socialists have a whole lot to do with why women have the vote, but they definitely were involved in the suffragist movement. Socialists were heavily involved with the civil rights movement of the 60s. Both Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, as far as I know Martin Luther King was a socialist. I haven't looked into whether Malcolm X was, although it wouldn't surprise me if he was. The Black Panthers were Maoists. There are so many leftist organizations and people who are imperative parts of civil rights movement and progressive movements that it doesn't surprise me at all that the founding coalition of Black Lives Matter identify as Marxists or socialists.
We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
This is two founding members of a political group who are self-professed, trained Marxists. They lead a clearly politically driven movement, and further organizers, such as the leader of Black Lives Matter for Greater New York, openly advocate in the media and elsewhere positions such as the following.
said, burn it down. You said, burn it down. It's time. So that makes me think that you want to burn it down.
I said if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it.
These are messages that align ideologically.
True. Yeah. That's the goal of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this is something that I don't think a lot of people understand about trying to achieve significant change in a society. You start with, this goes for any kind of negotiation. You start with what you would get if you had, what you would want if you had complete autonomous control, where you didn't have to negotiate with anyone. You could just, wave a magic wand or blink your eyes or whatever and create the system you want. You say, this is the system I want. And then you campaign for that, and you force the powers that be, if you're not in power, to make concessions until you get what you want. Now, sometimes you don't always get to that final position because they give enough and you lose support. This is kind of what happened in the 30s with the socialist fervor, and then the New Deal happened. They made concessions to the workers and the unions and whatnot, and that pacified a good number of the people who were agitating for the change. This is why most communists of the time hated Franklin Roosevelt. But you start with saying, yeah, this is what we want. If we don't get it, we're going to burn it down. And that brings people to the negotiation table. And the important thing is to not give up ground, to force the people with power to give up ground, or you're going to burn it all down.
Politically and otherwise, with a destabilization effect. The Black Lives Matter political movement makes repeated use of the word comrade, comrade being both an archaic Spanish derivation of the word friend or ally, as well as a Soviet communist greeting utilized in Russia during the height of the USSR.
Yeah, it's also a non-gendered word to refer to someone as your friend or ally. It's like the one piece of Soviet aestheticism that I don't think is a bad thing. Because with comrade, it's just, you are my comrade, you are my friend, you are my ally. It's non-gendered, and it displays a certain amount of solidarity that other words just don't convey. But it was used by the Soviets, so it's automatically a bad word.
Comrade on social media will more often than not yield an overwhelming majority of self-identifying Marxist community members. Acronyms such as ACAB, a slang pejorative for every single police officer in existence, will be frequently displayed as well, on top of repeated references to Black Lives Matter. Recall that a deliberate rift between protection forces and the general public are a tactic in destabilizing a nation, a tactic pushed forward by advocates for a political movement led by two self-identifying, trained Marxist leaders. The Bolshevik Revolution in large part was a leftist cause, which led to the formation of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a federation backed by the Marxist-Leninism ideology, which perpetrated untold and incomprehensible atrocities against its own people.
Yes, the Bolsheviks took leftist ideology and teachings and perverted them into the kind of state-powered government and economy that the Soviet Union enjoyed. It was not, there were definitely some leftist attitudes in the laws and rules of the Soviet government, but there was nothing really socialist about them, and they were far too authoritarian for any freedom-loving socialist to agree with. Like the idea of housing and employment being a right, and healthcare being a right, was baked into the Soviet constitution. So these were things that were available to everyone. Anyone could, everyone who was a member of the Soviet Union had access to housing, healthcare, and a job. Now, those jobs eventually became much more capitalistic, as members of the party, who were the only ones who could control those businesses, became more and more disconnected from the people, and we saw class antagonisms. Sort of state capitalism was created in the Soviet Union. But there were certain ideas within the Soviet Union that were based on leftist teachings. This is true. But this does not mean that every leftist today wants to recreate the Soviet Union. The ones who do we call tankies, and they're usually not included in most libertarian spaces.
Defected KGB agent discusses these tactics at length, and now, in a time when self-professed Marxists lead a political movement which advocates openly for the burning down of the existing system, Activision Blizzard releases a historical warning from Yuri Bezmenov, pointedly saying we must never forget history. But that's not where it ends. LaShawn K. Ford, Democratic representative for the state of Illinois and open supporter of the Black Lives Matter political movement, stated the following in early August of 2020.
I'm calling for the abolishment of history classes in Illinois. We're concerned that current school history teachings lead to white privilege and a racist society.
This is an open call.
Wait, what was that dude's name? I need to look into this. I haven't heard. I live right next door to Illinois. I don't remember hearing anything about this.
Following in early August of 2020. But that's not where it ends. LaShawn K. Ford.
Okay. Because I know there's a lot of discussion about changing the curriculum for history classes to focus less on the white saviors and the goodness of Western imperialism, and focus more on actual history and what actually happened, and to expand units on places other than Western Europe and America, which I wholehearteedly support. But the idea of abolishing history classes just is absurd to me. So, let me see. Current history teaches the racist society and overlook the contributions of women and minorities. Before this office to read a news release in today in Evanston to call for the abolishment of history classes in Illinois schools. Remove books that unfairly communicate history until a suitable alternative is developed. Okay. So that's a little more nuanced than what he said. I still don't 100% agree with him. Just because I'm a big history fan myself, and I think that abolishing history classes, like, not learning history at all is worse in my mind than learning the skewed and white supremacist history that I was taught in school. Because there are lessons to be learned from even those skewed you can learn from those skewed history lessons that are important while you develop an alternative. So I agree with his end goal, but I don't agree with his rhetoric here. The schools devote greater attention to civics and ensuring students understand democratic processes. I can agree there as well. Spend the time teaching about current politics and civics. That's important. Yeah, true. True, Dodge. And ironically teaching horseshoe theory. Whew. He just wants to ride horses and none of that political stuff. Insert image of that boomer group. Yes. She also said that Nazis were socialists actually take. Yeah, that's a common one. Went to a nice, expensive private school, too. It's not just public schools. Several of my high school and college teachers on Facebook, and I can show you just as many of them are MAGA bootleggers, probably the majority. Yeah. You generally don't get into the base leftist teachers until you get to colleges, in my experience. Do you know that National Socialist? It's in their name, okay? So, yeah, of course. Yeah. And ignoring the fact that the Nazis explicitly used the socialist name and rhetoric to appeal to the lower classes of Germany to get their power.
Democratic representative for the state of Illinois and open supporter of the Black Lives Matter political movement, stated the following in early August of 2020.
I'm calling for the abolishment of history classes in Illinois. We're concerned.
This is a minor nitpick. Is abolishment a word? Isn't it abolition? Okay. Okay, it's just another way of saying it. Okay. It always sounds weird to me, abolishment as opposed to abolition, but yeah.
That current school history teachings lead to white privilege and a racist society.
This is an open call for the abolition of American history education, later defined as indefinite at least until a new, better curriculum can be constructed. But the question is, constructed by who? The destruction of historical knowledge is a widespread tactic in the rise of new government. This has been replicated throughout history, and open advocacy for the removal of American history education.
This is another reason why I disagree with Ford's rhetoric there, because asking for the abolition of history classes until we can come up with new curriculum is just begging for that to be taken out of context and assumptions made of your goals or your attitudes or what have you. And while I normally don't advocate for people doing things just because of how the right or how your enemies will perceive your attitude, given that I also don't agree with the complete abolishment of history classes in general until we come up with a new curriculum, it's just bad rhetoric all around. I think that reforming, that dirty word among many leftists, the history curriculum is a good thing and a goal to strive for, but I don't think we should eliminate history classes in the meantime.
Education, while a political movement led by Marxist community organizers sweeps across the entire nation, and a simultaneous rift is exploited between the police force and the citizens they exist to protect.
Also, another thing I want to point out here, this just shows the right-wing thinkers' complete lack of belief in the idea that people can create ideas and movements, that regular people can create these ideas on their own. I got into a minor argument with my aunt, great aunt technically, a few weeks ago. She was in town. She's a hardcore right-wing conservative. And we got on the subject somehow. I didn't start it. I think my grandma did. About Black Lives Matter and police abolition. And she asked me, "John, are you a supporter of Black Lives Matter?" And I said, "Yeah." "Well, you know who started it?" I was like, I know it was a group of black people, but I don't, at the time, I wasn't sure of the exact origins of it, because it's not super important to me, the origins of Black Lives Matter. And she said, "It was started by George Soros." And I couldn't help but laugh, because right-wingers they don't believe that people would believe the ideas of the left if they weren't influenced by either money or some sort of false rhetoric. The idea that that the left's rhetoric rings true to so many working class people, that we try to address the complaints of working class people, just shows that we're all just shills of some billionaire who wants to increase his wealth, and not that we just want to create a more equal world for everyone. Because in their mind, if you're trying to create an equal world for everyone, you're hamstringing yourself.
in direct defiance of all knowable statistics and all gathered data, all in complete alignment with the tactics that Yuri Bezmenov discussed after his defection from a Marxist-Leninism ideologically controlled socialist/communist government. All of these things combined have transformed this simple Call of Duty trailer from an innocuous piece of marketing material to a scathing commentary on the current social political atmosphere, driven by activists all over this nation.
I mean, I think I've said enough that the Soviet Union was not socialist or communist, so he's completely wrong here.
Bezmenov warned of these many tactics, but he was not alone. Though this trailer does not specifically emulate the now historic text of 1984, authored by the late writer George Orwell, we can
also a socialist
see shockingly precise, even confoundingly exact replications of his warning. The phrase 2 + 2 = 5 is used in the dystopian novel as an example of ingsoc, or English socialism. It is an example of the party projecting messages that are intentionally untrue and contradictory as a control tactic. War is peace, truth is lies, ignorance is strength. This equation is repeated verbatim on social media by leftist advocates and even educational professors.
Yes, because we understand what Orwell was actually trying to point out, which is the way that socialist rhetoric can be misused by right-wing fascists, or just people on the right in general, to subvert populist movements and consolidate their power and prevent the possibility that the actual working class can gain the power they need to live a free and dignified life.
There was a stunning compilation created which shows with detail how 2 + 2 = 5, as stated in this authoritarian dystopia, is being parroted by activists today in modern America. The argument is that this mathematical standard, that mathematics itself, is a colonial...
Someone tells me 2 + 2 = 5. I'll always ask them for more details rather than just specifically as an idiot, because maybe they're talking about chickens and turns out that's how chickens work. Yes. Oh my god. In reality, people realize that both 2 can be true in different contexts. So far. Yes. Oh my god. Holy shit. Dude. What these people are saying is that sometimes there are things which sound nonsensical to your normal, common sense brain, but if you look a little deeper and actually read what and understand what they're saying, is 2 + 2 = 5 makes sense in a certain context. Okay. I get nervous around people who use the word always too much. I get the sentiment. What about isn't 2 + 4 always true? 2 apples + 2 oranges doesn't equal 4 apples. 2 + 2. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like. Yeah.
And oppressive construct, which must be dismantled or transformed. And all of this aligns precisely with the greater narrative that in order to destroy a nation, to demoralize it, subvert it, and cause destruction within, you need to undermine its individual systems. The Cold War trailer alters crucial context. Yuri Bezmenov, in many of his lectures, discusses the infiltration of not only government but also education systems. He appears to talk about an operative, a spy, or a militaristic covert infiltrator, but he is also talking about professors, educators, and wider academia. These
Marxist leftist professors are brainwashing our children. Jesus Christ.
Operatives do not assail the government hierarchy.
The reason why leftists survived in academia was because they could mask their preferences in certain attitudes, and even then they had to be pretty covert about it. Also, the fact that there's actual academic backing for socialism as opposed to, say, fascism. lends credence to why socialism survived largely in universities, and the fact that universities can legitimately go over things like the Das Kapital or the Bread Book or the Communist Manifesto, which is not really a piece of theory like some people think. It's basically just a call to action for proletariats in the late 19th century. But the academia is where socialism thrived, because many aspects of it, particularly in fields such as sociology, were integral to those fields. Critical theory, as espoused by Marx, is an incredibly important component to sociology, the study of how societies interact with each other and interact, how a society interacts. So there's a reason for that, and it's not this conspiratorial reason that you'll hear from fascists and other right-wingers. It's just that's where it was able to survive. Good thing it survived.
They attack and subvert the minds of the people by undermining the systems in place which give them stability and structure. These systems are numerous: math, protection, safety, family. On the Black Lives Matter website, we can see that their mission statement includes rhetoric such as, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure." And if we relate all of this back to a simple 2-minute Call of Duty trailer, we can see a warning with absolute clarity. This warning applies more closely.
Yes, because the nuclear family structure was created largely out of the desire to atomize people and prevent people from not like, this wasn't like something someone decided and enacted explicitly to do this, but it grew out of the atomization of capitalism and this idea that each person needs to be their own independent, self-sufficient individual, and relying on family is a failure. And if you have to rely on other people, then you're weak, and if you're relying on other people, then they can betray you, and all of these things which help undermine the core tenets of socialism, which are that we are stronger together. That when we unite as one people, one union, we can overcome any obstacle and create the world we want to create. By atomizing not just individuals in the marketplace, in employment and what have you, but by atomizing families, then we break these bonds of unity, of solidarity, and make it more and more difficult for the people, the working class, the proletariat, to unite as one and create a better world. This is also why this neoliberal idea of the politics is just every 4-year electoralism, or every 2 years, I guess, if you care about midterms too, instead of just politics being in everything. Politics is in everything. It's been in Call of Duty since the first one. Maybe not as explicit or as harmful as, say, this trailer or some of the more recent games, but there was still quite a bit of support for American imperialism and what have you in the early Call of Duty games, just as there is now. There's just more explicit examples of it now.
To modern America than many people will know or ever wish to accept, and whether by design or coincidence, which it could be, Call of Duty has broken a barrier of entertainment and social reality that no previous iteration in its lineage has ever even come close to, and it did all of that with 2 minutes of footage. It remains to be seen how deep this story will go, but in a world where constant activist anger has resulted in an untold number of corporate...
That's a valid point, and I'm guessing that it's going to be pretty surface level and not terribly deep, simply because Call of Duty wants the biggest tent possible, And hopefully they realize that if they explicitly make an anti-communist, even more so than their games are already, game that delves into communist infiltration of the United States or what have you, that they're going to alienate a lot of fans. It still could be that Blizzactivision is gonna go deep. It's also worth noting how important the Chinese market is to Blizzactivision, and given the Chinese still pay lip service to their to the Maoist ideologies that they were founded upon, which was based on a modification of Marxist-Leninism. It should be interesting to see how this game shapes out. Again, because Blizzactivision is super dependent on the Chinese market. Like, almost more dependent on it than the US market. It's that big.
Capitulations, seeing Activision Blizzard post this message, which warns with chilling precision against the loss of history, as our very own political leaders in the country advocate for the destruction of historical education. Watching,
you see, here again, we have essentialization. One legislator advocated for the abolition of history classes means that all of our politicians are trying to eliminate history. No. And again, he wasn't even trying to eliminate history in total. He was calling for the abolition until we reform it, which again, I don't think is a good idea. But to say that he's calling for the abolition of history is just incorrect.
Trained Marxist self-professed community leaders advocate for the existing system to be burned down. The material in this trailer, destabilization, demoralization, disruption, and subversion from a socialist, communist, or Marxist authority, is incredibly relevant. It seems rather obvious that this Call of Duty will encounter controversy. The mere fact that they pushed Yuri Bezmenov further towards the mainstream is already somewhat surprising, but in a world such as this, when America's social and political atmosphere is this eerily similar to the very things that he warned against all those years ago, a simple trailer becomes a ticking time bomb of outrage, with a meaning that is well and truly beyond the basic functionality of a random first-person shooter video game. Call of Duty Cold War is one to watch.
God, watch that fucking auto-aim snap.
And will likely have numerous future controversies should it aim to incorporate more of the teachings that Yuri Bezmenov has dictated. Either way, when a certain sect of activists become aware, there may already be sparks, because the activist political organization of Black Lives Matter, supported by a political establishment across the country, are utilizing and representing identical strategies and ideological dangers which Yuri Bezmenov fled Soviet Russia to escape, and they exemplify the very same tactics that he openly warned against till his passing on
Hey, Dodge, thanks for gifting subs. Appreciate it, man.
January 5th, 1993. America is getting more and more miserable. Demoralization. Businesses flee population centers after violent daily rioting. Destabilization. And all of this is becoming normalized after months of nonstop advocacy that the entire system must be uprooted, burned to the ground, or overthrown, which constitutes a violent change of economic and social policy. Crisis. It's all happening right now, word for word. But that's it. If you want support...
It's really not. Now he's going to chill. So it's really not happening, like Bezmenov said, simply because there's not an organized communist organization trying to overthrow the government and create a Soviet style. Like, here's the thing. People are taking Bezmenov's prescriptions and applying them to any leftist org and ignoring the fact that he was specifically talking about the Soviet method. Now, if you assume that the Soviets were leftists, were socialists, were communist, then yeah, okay, I can understand why you would believe that. But they weren't. The Soviets were state capitalists, borderline fascists by the time Stalin had consolidated his power. And they had little to nothing to do with any kind of actual socialist organization or economy. Y'all know what the origin of tankies is? A tankie is a pejorative term originally referred to those members of the Communist Party of Great Britain who followed the Kremlin line, agreeing with the crushing of the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 and later the Prague Spring by Soviet tanks, or more broadly, those who followed traditional pro-Soviet positions. So a tankie is someone, it was originally coined as someone who agreed with the Soviet Union rolling tanks into Hungary to crush a revolution. Does that sound like someone who's in favor of a dictatorship of the proletariat? Does that sound like an organization in favor of increasing the power and position of the proletariat, of the working class, of those who are least improved by the advances made in society? Yeah, didn't think so. So, again, even if Bezmenov was right, and there is some, or there was when he defected, some secret organization trying to build Soviet-style government in the United States that has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or the progressive movement or Bernie Sanders or AOC or me or Wizard's Bread Book or anyone else advocating for progressive, libertarian, socialist ideas. And this trailer, which I honestly think Upper Echelon Gamers just used this trailer as an excuse to cry about Black Lives Matter and the changes they want to make in society. This trailer was probably just a bit of outrage marketing. I highly doubt the actual game is going to be anywhere near as ideological. I actually do kind of hope that it is. Because at least, even if it is a shitty direction, it means that Blizzactivision is willing to be a little bold with their games instead of the same rah-rah America attitude that they've had for the last 10 years. But yeah, Best Unichan, yeah, Blitzchung, or Blitzchung, I think, was the Hearthstone player, I think. Let's see. Yeah, Hearthstone, who held up a sign that said, Free Hong Kong. See if I can find the video of it. Yeah, I think this...
Here's a story which just won't go away. Activision Blizzard is prize money away because he made comments
after this tournament, and he donned goggles and masks, pretty much what Hong Kong protesters wear, of course, to protect themselves from tear gas. And he says, liberate Hong Kong. He said that in Mandarin afterwards. Well, Activision Blizzard, which is 5% owned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot. Blizzactivision is partially owned by Tencent.
By one of the largest Chinese companies on the planet called Tencent.
Yep. So, yeah. China. It's really going to be interesting seeing the way things shake out between America and China over the next years. But Call of Duty is unlikely to do anything that would significantly impugn the Marxist-Leninist history, unless they get it signed off by Tencent, which they very well may have, because it has to be said that China is paying, at best, lip service to the Maoist ideals that were based on Marxist-Leninism that the PRC was founded on. But, like I said, I kind of hope that they do engage in some ideology. It might actually make for an interesting game even if it will infuriate every fucking leftist who sees it. Americans be like, riots in Hong Kong good, riots in America bad. True! Yes. I mean, it is kind of funny that it was like, China was talking about rolling tanks in to stop the Hong Kong protests, and pretty much everyone was like, this is an authoritarian regime cracking down on dissidents. And when we had protesters in Minneapolis and wherever just holding umbrellas and tear gas and gas masks and whatever, all of a sudden it's not so much. So yeah, the idea of police cracking down on them with live rounds was floated around. It's still being floated around. Honestly, I'm waiting for it to happen. It's kind of an inevitability. Hey, Diseli, how's it going? Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.